just giving a little brush up onto how we've got to where we are and where it's supposed to go. The complete nanny state, some call it, especially in Britain, where the government's into your very home, checking your refrigerator to give you lectures on how long to store meat and so on, and maybe go off meat altogether. That's part of the reason. And coming into even putting cameras in your homes. Cameras in thousands of families' homes now by order of the government. That doesn't surprise me, though, because I read years ago, and I've mentioned it on the air before, back in the 70s, I think it was in the American Psychological magazine, they said at the time they wouldn't be happy until every family was monitored by professionals to look for signs of aggression. That was what they said at the time. Because even family arguments were to get phased out completely. You would not be allowed to get angry about anything. You can see the world that they're bringing us into is one controlled by pharma as well. Just like that THX movie, it had all of that in it, where you get drugged all day long. They test your blood and your urine all day long to see if you need to up one drug or another, or if you've missed some altogether. That's the kind of society they want to bring in. It's very odd, you see, they say that all conflict must be abolished. All conflict. That's why, part of the reason, too, they wanted to abolish marriage or anybody mating with anybody for any length of time. Because there will always be some kind of conflict as two different personalities try to merge together and cooperate together and get along together. There's always little conflicts come up. Look at any school situation, look at even kindergarten, and watch the conflicts there. Conflicts are quite normal, obviously, but they don't want conflicts because they want to alter society in such a way that everyone is completely manageable by the governments. I've gone into it before where Wells and others talked about this as well. And that was also put into the movie 1984 by Blair. I always call him Blair, but that's his real name. But he, in 1984, he said you have a television camera in every room and a TV screen everywhere, so that Big Brother really is watching you, just like Britain, and like it's supposed to come to Canada and the States and everywhere else in the world, given time, once they break down the barriers, as they call it, to opposition, so that they can watch you and monitor you. And if you notice, too, in 1984, the movie, everyone lived on their own. No one lived with another partner. That was taboo. Then you go into the books again by the big boys like Charles Galton Darwin in his book, The Next Million Years, where he outlined the plan on behalf of the elites. And he said the same thing. He said that we who rule the world, we who guide the world, must retain our wild capabilities, because man is a wild animal with survival instincts, etc. We must retain these, so we must remain unaltered. But the rest of the public, it says we won't need those particular survival capabilities, because the state will be making all their decisions for them. We're living through this. When these guys write these books, and they belong to the biggest think tanks in the world, some of them secret, some semi-secret, and they're attending world meetings at the United Nations, then you can take what they're saying to the bank. They mean this. This is an agenda they're talking about. It's not their private wishes. And we're living through that very phase now. They've accomplished much of their goals already. And we've read recently, too, where in France, they were the first country, because they're so socialist now, they're the first country to pass laws that a man and a woman having an argument, anyone shouting at someone else is going to be charged under the law just for yelling. It's all coming to pass. These guys never go ahead without really publishing and telling you where they're actually going to take you. They won't always tell you the methods, the methodology of introduction of the scheme, but they do tell you where they're going to take you. It's so bad in Britain. Now, Britain is a flagship for the world, remember. That's where they test all of these things out first. I say the government's in your refrigerator. They're putting cameras up in folks' homes, thousands of families, as a trial to the whole planet. Why do you think they're giving you reality shows? Why do you think that everybody wants to be on camera? You're getting trained to be domesticated. Trained. As you think you're actually getting more freedom. You're copying what you see on TV. This article here is from the Sunday Express, UK News, and it's about this nanny state. They call it nanny state in Britain. It's so interesting, too, because you have this Fabian, it's a Fabian Labour government, all belonging to the Fabian Society of England, that run Britain right now. And it says here, revealed Labour's nanny state guide to being a grandparent. See, they've gone down through the generations, now they've got to the grandparents. This is January the 20th, 2010. Labour has launched a nanny state guide to teach grandparents how to care for their grandchildren. Fascinating, really, fascinating. Because, you see, those grandparents were the ones they first attacked to destroy the family units, give them a totally different culture, the drug culture and so on. Now they're telling them how to treat their grandchildren back after this break. Talking about the totally controlled society that's coming in and where they always test everything out in Britain first. They're so beaten down, I think, in that country after centuries of a very authoritarian type of society, a rigid kind of society, that's why they use Britain to do all of this stuff. Here, Labour's nanny state guide to being a grandparent. In an insult to Britain's pensioners, Children's Secretary Ed Balls, what a name, hailed a new government-funded website, begrand.net, which offers tips and advice on getting involved in grandchildren's lives. It's astonishing. Here's Fabians at work here, literally reorganizing society. They worked through the 60s, 70s, and 80s to help bring in this kind of nanny state socialist system. And here they are telling grandparents how to look after children. The same Fabians that had population control as top of their agenda since they were founded. In fact, they were terrified that the lower classes would outbreed the elites, and therefore they'd have some chaos, and they were working hard towards taking care of that as well. So now they're telling grandparents how to deal with children. It says here, but the site, which is part of an initiative costing taxpayers, that's okay, a staggering £60 million, instead offers a series of bizarre and unnecessary tips on childcare for worldly grandparents, most of whom have already spent decades caring for their children. Grandparents, according to the site, often have strong and sometimes strange opinions. See, they don't want your opinions or your view of the world passed on between the generations, by the way. I've gone on about that so many times in the past. That was part of separating the generations. It says here, amongst the information is nutritional advice, including a suggestion that teenagers can be bribed to eat their greens with a plate of French fries. Can you believe this? This £60 million. From a country that's supposed to be bankrupted so many times over. And the last budget was more than all the accumulated budgets they'd ever had in history put together. It says other indispensable tips include a guide on what a burn is and why it may be a good idea to ring an ambulance if your child collapses. So if you burn yourself or if your child collapses, they tell you what to do. Phone an ambulance. 60. Is this jobs for the boys or what? Are the elite having so many offspring they've got to create all these government departments to put them in for life? Is that what it is? It says here, choose a name your grandchildren can call you. Grandparents who have strong and sometimes strange opinions should settle on some names that satisfy all. Also, if you have an ethnic roots, it can be fun to try out the terms they'd have used in the old home, such as in Bubashka, Russian, or Abuela, Spanish, have a ring to them. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? Pretty much any noise your new grandchild makes can be claimed as the word for you, even if not in your own language. Try Zulu or Takur Da, which is Bengali for granddad. Oh, gee. Political correctness gone to extremes. And you know something? There's no expense spared when it comes out of the taxpayer's purse. Isn't that something? There's still folk in England losing their homes because of the crash in their mortgages. The hospitals are still grabbing your house. If you're elderly and you end up in a hospital, even for a brief time, they grab your home and sell it. This is a prototype for the planet, by the way. Amazing, isn't it? It's amazing how we're run. Look for signs of aggression. That was what they said at the time. Because even family arguments were to get phased out completely. You would not be allowed to get angry about anything. You can see cameras in thousands of families' homes now by order of the government. That doesn't surprise me, though, because I read years ago, and I've mentioned on the air before, back in the 70s, I think it was in the American Psychological magazine, they said at the time they wouldn't be happy until every family was monitored by professionals to see, checking your refrigerator to give you lectures on how long to store meat and so on, and maybe go off meat altogether. That's part of the reason. And coming into, even putting cameras in your home, just giving a little brush up onto how we got to where we are and where it's supposed to go. The complete nanny state, some call it, especially in Britain, where the government's into your very home.